perfectly okay to be a human and just do something for fun. If you want to spend a career having fun, that's okay too. But you start learning about systems when you start seeing what the interdependencies are. Taking from others so your piece can be bigger, you actually create riches and value of various different kinds, and that's actually what businesses run on. I think it's so important to engineer opportunities for AI to help people. When you give people a transformative experience, it changes them in a positive way and everyone around them. It's like an extra free currency.
Your work reminds me certainly that the future isn't something that we predict, it's something that we design intentionally, with clarity and with responsibility. Welcome back to the podcast. So today's guest is someone who has spent his entire career inside systems and then stepped outside of them to redesign how they should work. Mike is the CEO and co-founder of StoryMiners, a strategy and experience consultancy that helps leaders uncover the true essence of their brands and turn that into meaningful customer and employee experiences. Mike's journey spans tech support, banking, real estate, digital agencies, and enterprise roles, including time at IBM, where he worked as an e-visionary, helping organizations imagine what's next before they are ready to hear it. Today, Mike is focused on a big question: how do leaders stop managing the present and start architecting the future? Mike, it's fantastic to have you here today. Welcome.
So good to be with you. Thanks for the prep conversations. And also that intro made it sound like all of those experiences in my life were just like so planned. It was a random walk. Come on.
So take us back. Your career cuts across tech, finance, real estate, agencies, and enterprise. Looking back, what did those early chapters teach you about systems that actually work versus how they're supposed to work?
All right, I'm going to go way back. My first job out of college was at my aunt and uncle's travel agency, Rifkin Travel in Derby, Connecticut. My aunt pulled me aside one day after I told her how frustrated I was at learning so much in the world and why do I have to do all this menial administrative work? And she said, Mike, it seems like a long time to you, but this is really just a blip. Pay attention to what's happening to you and just file it away. So I believed her, and I started doing that. So when I was in client meetings or doing my day-to-day job, I kind of had this like third eye appear, and I started paying attention to what was going on. And I thought of, all right, what's this person really asking me for? What are they saying? What's going on? How did they come to frame things that way? And I step in late to these conversations because they've already had a lot of their life. Their questions have been around for a long time. So I kind of find out why they want to know what they want to know. How do they frame it? And what do they expect? I took that notion and I applied it to my work after the travel agency. And I started going into businesses as a consultant, and I would instantly hear what happened to them in the past, how they framed things up, and I saw what they got as a result. So in my life, I feel like I've gone through thousands of case studies of people not knowing what they're doing, making a decision, going forward and getting some kind of result. And all those experiences are mine now, and I get to build from that. It's like having my own little AI. You know, you throw all the data in and you can pull out some gems. Everybody listening to this podcast has had a similar experience. You learn from what others do. Mm-hmm. What I realized is that a lot of those approaches that people took and the decisions they made either had or didn't have an understanding of systems. People that are just going by feeling, oh, this looks really good. Let me go here. Let me try this. They're kind of in the moment, and they're not really building anything. They're not really bringing intent. They're reacting. And it's perfectly okay to be a human and just do something for fun. If you want to spend a career having fun, that's okay too. But you start learning about systems when you start seeing what the interdependencies are. I started paying attention to the people who were able to move several pieces on the board with one motion of their hand. You know, it's one thing to to tell people, if you're a leader, you can say something like, look, next year, I want 10% more. And as a challenge, I'm going to give you 10% fewer resources to do it. And that's kind of an optimizer strategy, and it implies you get more of the same. The really smart players that I've met in my life have realized that they can do more than one thing at a time. So they'll say, hey, I'd like 10% more, but I also want to know what you're going to learn. And I want to know how you're going to strengthen relationships with 3 of our existing clients. And on top of that, I want to know what new capability you want to get behind and build for the next 2 years. What a different approach.
Wow.
If you think about the different outcomes that you want to achieve, plural, all of those can be part of one strategy. And if you're not just thinking about yourself and taking more than you make, taking from others so your piece can be bigger, you actually create riches and value of various different kinds. And that's actually what businesses run on. If you spend all of your time taking money out of the system, there's nothing left for the system to run on. You've got to build the parts. You've got to build the connections. You've got to build the systems. And to do that, you have to invest. I don't mean you have to invest money, but you have to have intent and purpose as you go about building those things. So all the way back to the travel agency in New Haven, one of the most important lessons of my life. Thank you for a good first question.
Great. So you've gone from operating inside systems to redesigning them. So what patterns do you see now about people, organizations, or incentives that you couldn't see when you were inside those systems?
What's so interesting to me right now is that a lot of people are kind of stuck in a way of thinking, and they don't know that they're stuck. They think they're doing wonderfully. Like in our country, the United States of America, it's terrible how, and I hate the word polarized because it also is a biased word by itself, because most people are very similar to each other. Their needs are very similar. But we've got these 2 different ways of thinking, and it's creating all kinds of havoc. What I see that's possible in systems right now is basically changing the frame. And that's something that a lot of people don't do. So if you're seeing a problem right here, and it looks like you can't figure it out, all you have to do is change the frame, and you see it's part of a larger whole. And you can see what are the causal effects and what are the possible outcomes. The reverse works as well. You might be seeing the forest when you need to be seeing the trees. And I know this is a little bit abstract at this early part of our conversation, but changing the frame is probably one of the most important things that I've learned. And the other is the power of intent. You can't have a really good system or a really good design unless you have a point for it to optimize. Lots of people believe that profit is the most important thing you can do with your business, with your country, with your life, with your organization, with your shareholders. I beg to differ. I think profit's an important part of running a business, a community, an enterprise, your life, but there are other things that are important too. And if you can step out of the bias that one rule set is good for everyone, you can start to build systems that deliver different and better outcomes for multiple constituencies. That's a lot of words to say everybody can be better off if you think harder.
Yeah, no, for sure. So if we look sort of at a part of your career at IBM where you were an e-visionary, a fascinating title. What did that...
Yeah, that was based on e-business. Remember the big e-business campaign they had?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all about Y2K and all kinds of new technologies at the time.
Right. So what did that role expose you to that most leaders may never see?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know if it's most leaders may never see, and it's been I've been long enough away from them, like 25 years now, that I can tell this story. But I was floored at how sometimes stupid the company was. Here I was in this role of e-visionary, and my job is to go find the future, sell new projects to clients so that we could experiment with their results. I don't mean experiment on them, but find what's commercially viable, how to optimize results for clients and things like that. I was speaking all over the world on IBM's behalf, doing thought leadership, running these cutting edge engagements and having like so much fun. And then one day, the finance department, which we like to call the sphincter police, said no more travel. So, we were given mandates to go out and sell business, but we couldn't go to our customers. And we didn't have video teleconferencing back then. And watch your long distance phone calls. See how the small-mindedness got in the way of the bigger goals?
Wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me. The other thing that I thought that got me let go from IBM, besides the dot-com boom becoming the dot-com bust, is I refused to go through the company's certification program for consultants because I didn't believe in it. It was antiquated by 10 or 15 years at the time. Here we are talking about building new capabilities, building businesses by design, making them more agile. But no, I had to learn the process approach of A, B, C, D, E. And I get it. If I were my own manager, I probably would have fired me too. But I stuck to my guns. I didn't want to learn that stuff because I knew it was already, old. And you can't do a project plan and stick to it when you don't even know what the problem is yet. Intuitively, I couldn't agree with that. So I chose not to do that, and that set my life in a little different path.
So why
At the time, it really pissed me off, but now I'm happy about it.
Well, there you go. That's all that matters, right? It got you onto the direction that got to you, that makes you now happy. So everything happens for a reason, right? So, why do large organizations with talent, money, and data struggle so much with innovation?
Wow, I think that's above my pay grade, Dylan, but I'll give it a shot. I think that process gets in the way of creativity. And what I mean by that is there's no such thing as a static world. We kind of have these numbers and projections and Pareto curves and black belt this and sigma that, and they tell us that if we're just good enough at math, we can kind of tell where things are going. Ever since the scientific method started, ever since financial equations and spreadsheets have been around, we've placed a high value on predictability. And the core of that is people want more money. Prove to me that my ROI is going to be positive and I will invest. De-risk the future. And the reality is, in my opinion, that world just does not exist, and it never has. For a short period of time, when in my country they were putting down intersections for all the interstate roadways, there'd be a hotel and a fast food restaurant and a shopping center at every single intersection. That was predictable. But in the world we live in today, where one day you find out that there's this new spray that you can put on your car and it'll never overheat, and another day you can put an app on your phone and never lose it, or whatever. I'm making stuff up, but all these new innovations create a constant state of change. And we all feel it. Sometimes it feels exciting and makes us feel, oh my gosh, like I have superpowers, and other times it's overwhelming. But the point is that instead of designing for rigid, predictable outcomes with very little room for fluctuation, we really live in this giant flux of a world, and we need to design our systems and ourselves to kind of go with the flow a little bit more, to take advantage of things as they happen, to build and create our intent and put it out into the world so that others can get some benefit from it as well, and so that we can too. But we can't stand still. So why are organizations so wired against innovation? They really want to make those profit numbers. So they'll pick a number that they want to go after, and they prioritize it to the detriment of every other part of the company. Talent management, diversity, innovation, culture, giving people time to learn and grow, whatever it is, profit tends to come first. And we've got a whole generation or two of people that have learned to optimize for profit. And many of those companies go out of business. We should run a little search in Perplexity or something. How many of the Fortune 500 globally have fallen out of the ranks? Every 10 years, the number is greater. because the companies rocket up to success and then they stick with that model and then they fall out of favor. It's kind of weird. So it's a lot about bias and thinking, and it's a lot, in my opinion, about not being able to design better in an ongoing way for the future. And that's where all of StoryMiners' work is right now. We're helping leaders to get really clear on what they want for the future and building it in such a way that alignment happens early so that they can get the best parts of the design into the company as quickly as possible. And it's basically all about turning strategy into a story that people can understand. It's the leader's job to be an architect, not just a shouter of new numbers like 10% more, 10% less. I covered a lot with that. I hope that was helpful. So,
what happens there? You have a very clear case of entrenched short-term governance, right? And
well put.
if people are in are promoted to a managerial position, they want to look like the star. They want to look like they are leading a team that is growing the numbers or growing and doing well and being successful. And what that looks like in the real world in corporations at the moment is literally year on year, month on month, quarter on quarter numbers, right? Which, to your point, most definitely can be to the detriment of the culture, people's progress, and just overall creativity and innovation. Without a doubt, I've seen it happen myself.
I believe we have to get better at doing what's new in general. The bias, and you described it so well. You could have answered your own question, Dylan. Next time you don't need a guest. You can just do both sides of the podcast.
Talk to myself. Talk to my AI.
What a good demo that would be. So a lot of people, building on what you're saying, a lot of people have become very good at maintaining things. The skill for building something new is a very different skill set. It requires you to be able to analyze, synthesize several feasible futures, keep them all in mind as possible, test, listen, discern what matters most, and put into place new systems, plus make the shift from the way things are today to the way they are tomorrow. A very different skill set.
I think what's interesting there, what I'm hearing for sure, and I've sort of experienced this, it's innovation, creativity, entrepreneurialism has really shifted outside of large corporations because they are now large corporations. So I think back in the day when all of these companies that are now large were once small and starting up, you had to be entrepreneurial, you had to be an initiator, you had to be creative, you had to be nimble, and that had people at the forefront at that point in time who had that mindset that you're describing. But as time has gone on over the decades, these companies grow, they're successful, they need more people, and I think what happens is the population grows and there's more people to service, and so processes are put in place and it gets larger and larger and larger, and you have these corporations that are systematized to the point whereby in order for that machine to continue, it doesn't need the entrepreneurial person, it doesn't need the innovator, it doesn't need the person who thinks outside of the box. It has people who are process driven, who are admin stricken, and just want to keep that process ongoing, maintaining it without getting into trouble, because they don't understand how to be innovative. They don't understand how to be creative. They don't understand how to be entrepreneurial. They're not the rainmakers who started the business or started the corporations back in the day. And so it's sort of a victim of its own success in that regard, because it's grown so large that it's almost diluted how it started in the first place, and it can survive with that dilution because it's got so big and because it's servicing so many people. It's basically this machine that needs people who can, process-driven people who can just keep the cogs going, and that leads to a very dead environment.
Yeah. The only thing I heard was admin stricken. You made it sound like a disease.
Yeah, it
It was
is.
so funny.
I think
Yeah.
the
So
bureaucracy and admin of and processes are important. Do not misunderstand me, but processes to the point whereby you just have process-driven people who are not creative, who are not entrepreneurial, who do not think outside the box to try and bring in different ways of thinking and to win business in a different way outside of what worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, leads to a very dangerous place for that business, because it will get to the point, to your point, whereby they're going to go from having gone up here, they're going to start to sink. And that's why you see those big companies that were in, the top 100, top 500, whatever it might be, out of that top set.
yeah, let's bring AI into the topic here, and let's see if we can find a way for AI to help businesses become more agile. And I'm going to borrow from things I've learned from other people, because I am a neophyte when it comes to using AI. But I do have an eye for strategy, and I do adopt technology quickly. I just don't know how to code stuff. I have decided I'll never do that, and I'm very happy with that decision too. So
Go ahead.
yeah, what I'm seeing my most brilliant friends do, and companies to some extent, is they're starting to manage process less and context more, because AI can connect the dots between all the steps. It can always look to the knowledge base before it gives advice. Like in medicine, if there's a new way to cure acne, the AI for facial complexions looks over here, and if there's any new data that's relevant to that patient, it brings it up. So, you don't need to read every single medical journal. You don't need to double, triple, quadruple check or go to 5 specialists. You can get all the information in one place, and it's always up to date. It's always current. When an organization puts enough effort into defining its own context, and it makes that flexible, agile, and adaptive, then any process can be personalized and customized and still be efficient. That's a new way to design. That's a way to get these behemoth organizations. It's not a single point solution. It's not a light switch you turn on and off. I'm not trying to trivialize it. It's hard work. But the notion that you can set the principles of your business in motion, and you can, a little bit like what Claude did a couple of days ago when they published their Claude AI Constitution, which revealed how they're instructing their own code set. And one of the most interesting instructions that they put into it as a sidebar, and I might get this not perfectly right, but is if you're asked to do something that's not ethical, don't do it, even if Anthropic asks for it. So they put their ideals ahead of their interests, which I thought was really authentic. That was cool.
And very important. And I'm so glad that you brought AI into the topic and sort of lent in there, because it's obviously something that I am very interested in, based on the fact that I have an AI company and I create AI personas. And, from what I'm hearing, you don't talk about AI as a shortcut in any way, shape or form. You talk about it as a co-creator within these big companies. What do you see as the difference between the two?
When you put the process first, people serve the machine. When you put humans first, you get smarter humans and better outcomes. So at my company, StoryMiners, I'm deliberate about building our AI tools so that any decision is collaborative between people. And I don't mean like what time to schedule Mike for his next keynote or something like that. That's an administrative thing. It doesn't really matter. But if it's a question about where's the business going, what's the value we're going to deliver for a client, all that kind of stuff. How are we going to change our brand? How are we going to show up in front of customers? What's our new content going to be? The questions that are meaningful. It requires people to get into a conversation with each other, with the support of AI, but we're taking the decision points out of the system and putting them into humans. That way, it's a little bit more human first.
Yeah.
So that's one example.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so far as I'm concerned, nothing replaces the human experience, right? In any way, shape, or form.
If we believe that it can, then that's the world that we're creating.
Yeah, I think
Intentionality is important.
for sure, and I think this is the thing: the organic side of what a human is, and our consciousness is something that AI will never have. We can program it to have replicate consciousness, and it can have its own form of decision making, but ultimately it's still from the inputs that it's been given by humans, and it may very well come up with something and pick up salient points from the inputs it's been given that we as humans have never thought about, and therefore one could argue that's its own creativity and its own thinking, and that's where its power comes in. But it still doesn't have consciousness, which is infinite. It has still a contained set of inputs that it's been given, even if it's a gazillion inputs, even if it's sophisticated. And I say that as someone who is a massive advocate of AI, but AI used in the right way, applied in the right way to help amplify us, to help speed up what we do, in order to be able to actually pull out salient points that we as humans miss, because we will miss, so that we can speed up what we do in a way that has never been able to be possible before. And so, humans ultimately still steer the ship, as you say. It's about then allowing us to be able to spend more of our time on higher value work, as opposed to it being taken up with the more process-driven, admin-stricken, time-bearing, tasks that humans are burdened with currently.
Very true. No disagreement from me. Let's find something to fight about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think the thing with big companies is that they're certainly scared of it. I see a lot of companies, certainly in the financial world, like scared about bringing AI that's linked to an open source into their platforms, which I do understand. But there's a lot of what humans do in certain roles, in banks for sure, that humans just don't need to do. And there's resistance. There's resistance. So from your perspective, what's the biggest misconception that you have seen leaders in businesses currently, that they currently have about AI?
I'll tell you one that happened to me 3 days ago, floored me. I had a conversation with someone in their 60s who sits on no less than a half a dozen boards. And the question about AI came up. And I asked her, have you ever used AI? Do you have a Claude account or a ChatGPT account? Well, no. So I gave her very first experience. Oh my God, how can somebody who sits on a half a dozen boards and is steering the future success of probably $1 billion worth of shareholder assets not have a first experience with AI? I don't get it. It just floored me. So that conservatism, that don't get too close to the workings of the business, I don't do tech, those kinds of attitudes, that will just, put those companies to death a little bit faster. It makes them irrelevant. Things are moving so fast. We need to adopt different rules, different postures, attitudes, perspectives. We need to be learning on purpose. We need to create learning journeys for the people in our employ and in our environs. Everyone needs to be better, smarter. I think it's so important to engineer opportunities for AI to help people not only to do their work, but to transform by asking them better questions, by giving them options that they hadn't considered before, by getting their brains to race and think about more things. So it's not just about reserving the key decisions for humans, it's about making those decisions ever better, framing them better, and encouraging people to think in new ways about the problems that they can see and to consider the solutions for the problems they haven't been able to see until AI pointed out a couple of connections. That's where we should be spending more time. We are going to be working with AI forever. And by the way, I wish they didn't call it AI because it's not artificial and it's not intelligent. It's just a misnomer.
So how would you describe it?
I think what we've got is somebody, I can't remember who it was, that did this little, not an expose, but they did this little historical on, we used to like tie knots and ropes to mark the passage of time. We used to have chunks of shells as money. We painted on cave walls. We etched letters in stone. We developed a printing press, okay? Getting the information from those systems was laborious, even with a card catalog in a library. And if you don't know what a card catalog is, it's a triplicate system of 3x5 cards by title, by subject, and by author that you can use to find anything in the library. The problem is you have to know that something exists and what you're looking for before you can find it. It's such a poorly designed, in my opinion. It was great at the time, but now we've got the ability to find stuff that you never even knew you might be interested in and to bring it to you instantly. So I think AI is a great way to find out things more quickly so you save time, and also to learn things that you didn't know were important so that your thinking can evolve. AI is evolving. I believe that for people with open minds, we as human beings, as thinking machines, are evolving as well. And we need to really open up to that and be very discriminating about what we let into our brains, especially in terms of thinking patterns and the like. We can't just say yes to everything. I think it's important for each of us because all of us collectively are building the next models of AI because all of our answers and the things that we generate are becoming part of the next model. So I think we need to ask, why are we asking what we're doing and how are we asking? If we're mindful about those two things and we do it with some intent, we're going to learn, just like I learned from my aunt, what were the patterns that got me a little bit smarter over time. But being mindful of why we're asking and how is going to help us to solve the right kinds of problems with AI by ourselves and to let technology just take care of it for us.
So then
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Sorry.
If I have an all-electric, self-driving car and it wants to go schedule its own service, heck, anytime between 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning, go have fun. I don't care what day you do it.
Yeah.
Automate that. I don't care. If it's about getting a new car, I want to be involved in that. So it's up to me to say that and to ask things in a certain way. So I have to be more mindful about my relationship with the tools that I use. I have to know what my preferences are for problem solving, for administrative support, for collaboration. We should all, in my opinion, be thinking about those things. So the big shift for humans is from taking instructions to being leaders.
So then what concerns you more, the misuse of AI or a lack of imagination with AI?
I think we're not adopting fast enough. That's my big risk. I think we're underutilizing all the tools that we have at our disposal. A lot of people are pushed back, like that board member that I described when she had never used AI before. I don't know what her reasons were, but we need to be using it more quickly because at our own little level, it will, at the level of our individuality, it will give us more free time, better options, better understanding. And it does take a little bit of work, and I think that's okay for everybody. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, get me back on track.
No, see, I mean, it's we were talking about the fact that you feel that AI is massively underutilized.
Yes. Yeah.
And
The biggest problem.
That's a general thing. Like I'm seeing it certainly in the UK as well. I think people are bamboozled by it. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of fear surrounding it, and people are either paralyzed in the fear of all the data that's out there, all the statistics or projections about what AI is going to do, replacing 300 million full-time jobs over the next 10 years, those types of scary statistics or predictions rather are fueling the scaremongering, and people are like either paralyzed into the fear of not understanding what to do because there's all this noise, or they're just ignoring it. Even worse, right? Yeah. So, and even if they do know that they should be doing something, they don't actually understand how to deploy, how to embed AI into their company. So I think that feels like what's going on with respect to underutilization. And then also you get people, you talk about a 60-year-old board member. I know people in their mid-20s. I know people graduating from university, actually in their final year at university, who've been told by their universities, you can't use AI.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I'm like, but basically our academia, certainly in the United Kingdom, there is, and in schools as well, that they're not embedding, intertwining how AI is used to help students amplify how they get their work done. Because, I think ultimately, and this has been bounded around a bit, but, the value of knowledge is going to zero.
Mm-hmm. But it's what you do with it and the context that you have that's worth so much more.
That scares academia.
Yeah. There's that light switch problem in a number of places, including sometimes in academia. Oh, we're going to adopt AI. Oh, no, we're going to value our humanity and not use AI. The reality is you need to get good at both. So why don't we have open book with AI tests and assignments, and why don't we have AI primary assignments and human-only assignments? We need to get good at all three of those.
What they don't understand is, like, if you apply AI effectively, you then get more time to be able to value the human. Have more human connection. We run around like headless chickens trying to pay our bills, trying to do all of our admin, when AI can be, if it's set up properly, do a lot of that so that we don't have to spend all our time doing that, so that we can spend more human time, more human connection. That's the irony of this whole thing. I'm like, do you not get that? Do you not see that?
Yeah, we need to put that on the dashboard right next to the, in the balance sheet,
right
there. I'm going to go maybe a little off color here with an example, but when I was studying Portuguese at the University of Florida, there was this period of time, the Romantics, and we read all this romance literature. Oh, I long for thee, and then they'd commit suicide, or die by suicide. It was just a weird time in literary history. So that you can read all that you want to about kissing. You can read 1,000 books. You can look at anatomy and, muscle movement for lips and suction and everything else, and tongue movement. You can get really specific. But until you kiss somebody, until you're kissed, you don't know anything.
For sure.
And I think we need to kiss more. We need to experiment more. We need to use AI for our own ends. I went to a theater, an opening for a very small documentary film last year, and it was in a small theater, and I had to drive all the way to Macon, Georgia, an hour and a half to 2 hours away, the heart of the South, Macon, Georgia. And the lady sitting next, the whole thing was about genealogy and history and, slave trade, all kinds of topics all intermingled. So the lady next to me and I started a conversation, and we were from very different worlds. She was much older, her history was different, her interests were different, but there was one thing that we found that we had in common, and that's the interest in family history. So she was telling me about her history, and I told her a little bit about mine, and we found out there was some commonality. And we also found out, she told me, that it's really hard to get the next generation interested in their lineage. It used to be that family heritage was passed generation to generation, and people could go back 10 generations and tell about their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather and parents and all of that. So I pulled out my phone and I showed her an app that she could use to just lay a bunch of pictures on the table, shoot one camera image, and it would automatically separate them and categorize them, and she could just go in and tag them and then share them with all of her family. I showed her another thing where she could take one of these old crackled photographs that kind of had been in a fire and was all brown, and you could barely make out the faces because the shading and the hues were all off. And they looked like they were sitting next to her. It looks like the picture was taken yesterday, and she started, like, her throat tightened and she was starting to tear. That meant so much to her. So that's the way that she learned about AI.
Right.
And now, a few months later, I heard from her, and she's digitized a bunch of pictures. She's got some of the younger kids involved, and on and on. So when you find something that's meaningful for you, and you get to create value your way, that's one of those examples of working with AI. And that spreads in a very, very good way. Because in addition to making things more findable, we talked about that with card catalogs, and more current, we talked about that with, Acne. Now you get scale for everyone. Everyone can have scale. Everyone can build an app. So access is no longer a problem. I hope that marketing takes a big dive pretty soon, because it's way over bloated, and it'll just be nicer for things to connect a little bit more directly. Anyway.
So I think without a doubt, I think people need to actually feel it, use it, see what it does. But I think there's still a gap where people don't even know what people don't know what they don't know, right? So they don't even know what they could do with it, right? And even if it is easy to make an app or make a business or do this, that, and the other, it still needs to be the human that prompts it, that steers the ship.
Yeah, exactly. No disagreement from me.
If you're no good at, I talked about earlier about knowledge going to zero, and you said it's what you do with it. Absolutely. And that's the key. It's then what you do with all this, all these tools and all this knowledge at your fingertips. That's what it then comes down to. Oh, guess what? The human steering the ship still. It just allows the human to steer the ship like a speedboat as opposed to a big juggernaut ship, right? So, and I think then it comes back down to how you use these tools, but people need to even start to use it, which then further tells me we haven't scratched even the surface of the AI story.
So agreed.
We think we've come a long way. We think things are moving fast in terms of what tools are out there that allow you to do lots of different types of things, but people don't know actually how to use them. So they're not using them, and that's the key. It's the usage. It's making the quantum leap, not just to embed it into how companies operate, but actually getting humans using it so that they feel and experience, oh, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah, that's the kissing story in more words.
Yeah,
well done.
For sure. I mean, but that's going to take that's where the real quantum leap will occur. Humans actually not being scared about this, understanding it's really straightforward to use. You just need to get started.
Yeah. There's some things that we can do as humans inside of our organizational structures to encourage that to happen. And one of them that I've been toying around with for the last couple of months is the idea of reducing or eliminating apprenticeships. Apprenticeships, like learning how to shoe a horse or, do some other blacksmithing activity or do wood turning, whatever it is, you basically give up a couple years of your life for free, and you work for a master who slowly, let some of his or her skills eke out onto you. And then you learn the tools of the trade. But you're basically giving up a lot of time in order to get that. And it's a very, very slow process. When the world's not turning very fast, medieval times, it's fine. But in today's world, what if we could use AI to give people more meaningful experiences in the right order for them, given their learning propensities and modalities, based on the situations they're being asked to do, that wouldn't require as much management time, that could make them more productive faster, that could harvest their feedback as first-time users and fresh eyes so that the system itself could improve. That's the kind of thinking I think boards should be giving to their leadership teams. What are the pressure points that are good for everyone? So if you eliminate or reduce apprenticeships, it forces you to inventory the slow points in an organization. It points at what kinds of information do we need to get in the heads of our young people, like previous deals, previous decisions, previous ethical emergencies that have happened, so that they get the knowledge, kind of like driving a taxi in London. You spend 2 years riding on a bike and hiking so you get the knowledge and learn the city. Then you learn your other skills around taking care of passengers and how the car works and blah, blah, blah. And then you're a wonderful representative and ambassador for the city, not just a driver. You're part of the security team, your tourist guides, you help with safety and on and on. So many good outcomes from that system. Imagine if we could do that in weeks.
So for leaders who feel trapped inside broken systems, in your opinion, what's the first mindset shift that they need to take?
It's very much, I think, like mental health or addiction. You have to admit that there's something to work on. And then you need to have people to talk to. You need to create some kind of community. You need to find sources of information that you and others will trust in common. A teacher, a consultant, a course, a subscription. And you have to set upon doing some experiments, because you don't learn until you try. One of the cool things about AI is that it's so powerful. One of the hard things about AI is it's not coming across like, oh, here's a new invention for your TV. Turn this dial and you can switch channels, That was breathtaking when you had 13 channels back in the 60s and the 70s, whatever number of channels were in each of your areas. But that was one change that everyone had to adhere to. That kind of distribution does not exist anymore. I don't mean televisions, but the idea of one innovation that everyone must respond to the same way. They learn quickly from each other. But with AI, where you can learn anything, go anywhere, and work anyhow you want to, it's different. So you need to create your own learning and experimentation. And that's different than what we're used to. But it's in my opinion, it's definitely not scary. It's more opportunistic. But sensing that and being able to articulate that mind shift and that different way of seeing things is so important at a leadership level, or whomever is doing, the early spade work to get a new idea or a new tool into practice. But it happens one at a time, and I want to re-emphasize how important it is for people to decide why they want to use AI and how. Even back to the little old lady that I met at the theater. She had a very clear picture of what she wanted to do to bring her family together. And to do that, she was going to make the pictures easier to share. She was going to cross the chasm from analog, printed, outdated, no fun to look at pictures to more vibrant, current, digitally available pictures that everyone else could enhance by putting mustaches on them or whatever they wanted to do for fun. So she crossed the chasm. That was really brilliant of her.
So you've said... Sorry?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's very interesting to hear that. So you've said that leaders need to become sort of architects of the future, not just managers of numbers, right? So, what does that look like in sort of real day-to-day leadership, so far as you can?
Sure. I'll give you an example. I don't know if I can answer that question fully, but I'll give a try at it. People who've been working in their own companies, for 5 or 10 or 15 years, they've gone through the struggle of figuring out what their identity is. They've done product market fit. They've landed their first client. They've added new products and services. Maybe they even added some money into the company. They've had growth and they've had downtimes and all of that. And now things are pretty steady. They're one of those small corporations with lots of good process. And they're getting a little bit steady, because steady doesn't mean growth. It doesn't mean decline. It's just they're in stasis. The leaders don't stop thinking. They don't stop inventing. They don't stop wondering. The brains they had when they started the business, the heart and the soul they had when they started the business is still in them. And they're thinking beyond. The world for them is different. These folks are having a hard time describing what the future will be like. And even when they do, their own teams are saying, whoa, that's not what we do here. This is how we do things. See the difference? It's not what we do. This is how we do things. So any new idea is going to break the current way things are done, and that's where the resistance comes from. So on this architect thing, it's really important for the leader to develop the skill or to get the support to imagine what a change will look like when it's fully operational in the future. Like, do you know the TV show Star Trek? Are you familiar with that? Okay. Imagine if the story was told not from the year 2300, but from the year 1960. How hard would it be to tell that story of what life would be like? You needed to have the spaceship and the bridge and the Klingons and the photon torpedoes and the transporters. When you see all those things working and you see how people react to them, you kind of believe they're real. Avatar did the same thing with tall blue people who didn't breathe oxygen and had sex with their hair and rode ponies and flew dragons. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's batshit crazy. But we believed it because all of the given circumstances were brought into a whole that actually made sense. And it was consistent across the entire film, or in the case of Star Trek, across the entire multi-show series. So a good leader is going to architect that future and give people a clear picture of not only what will the business be doing mission-wise, but how it will operate. They'll design the operations. They'll show what the software looks like. They'll say, here's the new journey map. All of that leads people to realize, oh, I have a place there. Oh, my skills are going to be necessary. Oh, and I want to learn this so I can help build that. Nobody likes to be changed. Everybody likes to learn, grow, and make something.
Yeah. So I think the difference there, you've got, a leader's the visionary, and then you've got, managers get stuff done, get that vision. And then you need as a leader for people to buy into your vision, to get that, to become materialize into the real world, right?
I want to change that just a little bit, what you said, Dylan, because you've got visionaries and then managers who get stuff done. That's the gap where there's a big break today, because the managers who get things done are going to go incremental. They can only go incrementally. The skill of building something new from running something that's ongoing is night and day. And I learned that when I worked for the vice president of Kinko's, which is purchased by FedEx Office. It was a very famous copy store that basically helped professors print their syllabi for classes and a bunch of other services. Students did their reports and their resumes, they sold paper, blah, blah, blah. So I was working for this guy, and he was trying to grow a little bit more aggressively. He was taking the store managers out of the best performing stores and putting them into a new store where they had to start everything up. Totally different skill set. Running a store, scheduling employees, dealing with customers, handling machine and equipment breakdowns, calling the landlord to fix the air conditioning, that's one set of skills. Negotiating paper supply contracts, planning footprints, managing contractors who are going to be painting things, deciding where electrical needs to be and making sure that it's safe, figuring out ingress and egress, security, totally different things. So what I suggested to him was that they use a specialist to open all the stores, and that they queue up everything that's needed in the store in the warehouse. Don't queue it up in the store, set it up in a warehouse, even though it costs more, because then you can pay less rent and deliver everything at one time. The store's up in 2 or 3 days, and you're in business. So the cost of a slow start was the economic driver. Why do you deprecate your best store's sales while the manager's over here underperforming? And why are you taking so long to open your stores when you could run it all administratively, queue up your equipment and your counters and your coffee machines, pay less rent because you're not wasting 3 months to set your store up? So your lease starts 3 days later, your store's open. It kind of made sense. So back to the point of the space between a leader and a manager. the leader, whoever the visionary is, leader or someone in the middle, they need an incubator where their ideas can be made whole, where they can go from vision to blueprint to prototype, to enactment if that's necessary, and then they share the idea. But you share it with a very small group of people, get their feedback, make the idea stronger. It's just like prototypes in software and doing product market fit. Let's get 10 users to talk about it. Okay, great, we fixed that. Let's do 10 more users, brand new, fresh eyes, see what they say. Eventually you go to the naysayers and the difficult folks. What do they say? Why won't this work? And then you solve for that before you announce. Then when you're announcing something, wow, that's breakthrough. You've thought of everything. I love that. I want to be part of that. Yeah. It's the more likely response.
For sure. I think that's a smart way to look at it in terms of, getting people to buy in, getting people to see what you're doing in practice, and then, the morale building from like dealing with different segments of the potential audience, people who are on board, people who are fresh eyes, people who are like resistant, and solving for the objections, I think is, and then getting over that. And then all of a sudden, as you say, you've got the entire spectrum of potential responses, which is really important for people to hear, that whole spectrum, right? And then understand how to deal with that. So, if someone were to listen to this conversation, as we come towards the end of this conversation, it's been fascinating, and takes just one thing away, what would you hope that it is?
I would say it's express your strategy for the future as a story so people can understand it, buy into it, and help make it real. When you give people a transformative experience, it changes them in a positive way and everyone around them. It's like an extra free currency. When people are switched on and really excited about their work, they do more. They have more fun. More gets done. More money gets made. They earn more money. It's just a virtuous, positive cycle. So express your strategy as a story, because not very many people care about the shareholders getting an extra 2% of margin.
So stories matter, right? Stories are a big, big factor to the whole process of being able to get people to, again, I use the term buy-in, but like there's a hook there, whether it's emotional, whether it's an interest, So would you say that that's, in terms of your work at StoryMiners, is that the type of impact that you ultimately hope your work and your platform brings to the table?
Absolutely. When we started the company in 2002, it was truly brand storytelling. Hey, this is who we are. Welcome. We're all about saving baby seals, and you should try us out. It's very basic messaging, availability of products and services, beliefs, things like that. In the middle of our tenure, and we're almost 25 now, it was all about customer experience in real life. How do you express your brand as an experience? And that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of companies have touch points where employees and customers come together, and how that makes them feel is how they feel about the brand. Now, with so much change in the world and so much being taken apart and so many gaps in our old systems that used to connect us all together, I believe that story's biggest new role is to help visionaries architect their futures. And when I say story, I don't mean a story about, I mean a story of how and why. Much like we talked about Star Trek and Avatar. Somebody had to design all that equipment, all those behaviors, all those rituals, the Gaia tree, the Starship Enterprise. That stuff had to be thought out ahead of time for the whole story to work. And people are smart. When they hear you promise something, their brains go, all right, how's that going to work? How's he going to make that? How is she going to do that? So if you do that as part of the story, if it's kind of like a play or a movie script with lots of detail on set and functionality and who's doing what role, if it's got a little dramaturgy in it, which is a word that describes like the given circumstances of the time. That's a story that you can hang your hat on. That's something that's got substance that people can like poke at a little bit and be satisfied that there's something there.
Yeah.
So leaders have to put reality, future reality, into their strategy. They can't just say numbers anymore. It's not enough. They can't just say, oh, we're going to build some software that's going to automate this. Go do it. Too many unknowns, too many variables, too many ways for the company to go off track or off brand. It's the leader's job, the visionary's job, to describe that in vivid detail so that everyone else can see themselves in the future as part of it. And that's when the transformation starts. People are drawn to it, attracted to it. So instead of repelling them like, magnets that like never quite touch, you twist it and boom, they go like that.
Feeling included, feeling part of something, community. I think those are all it's human connection, right? Ultimately, it's building a culture where people feel connected to what is being done in the work in the company, right?
And they have a voice and they're part of building it. They're like, they get to put their fingerprint on it when they're done. It's like the engineers at Mercedes often would sign the engine blocks for the high-end sports cars.
Wow.
They put their name on the engine. It's like their work. It's their baby. They made it. And it's like this, look, I'm giving this to you. This is my life's best work. And they're giving it to a customer. It creates a relationship.
And bestowing you with the responsibility of taking care of this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
to go from operator to steward, if you don't mind, I'll borrow that in the future. That's really good insight.
Truly very, very, genuinely thoughtful conversation here with you today. Your work reminds me certainly that the future isn't something that we predict, it's something that we design intentionally, with clarity and with responsibility. So Mike, where can people find out more about you? Where can people, get in contact with you? What's the best route to source?
Sure. The easiest place to go is the website, StoryMiners.com. It's one word, StoryMiners. I'm sure you'll have my spelling somewhere down there for my last name. Email, I'm so easy to find online, Mike@StoryMiners.com. Telephone numbers on LinkedIn. And please just reach out. We're not a huge organization, but we do huge projects. They're a lot of fun. And be happy to talk to you. And thanks, Dylan, for having me and for the great questions and especially the summaries. That last summary was so spot on. It was just, you're doing a good job for your audience, if I may say.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. It means genuinely a lot to me. It's been a very thoughtful conversation. I very much appreciate your time, your wisdom, your thoughts. Thank you for the work that you're doing, for the story that you're pushing. And thank you for your perspective that you shared today. It's been, for sure, very insightful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I want to add one more thing. To the people listening, you've heard a lot of big ideas from both of us. You've heard us dealing in multiple levels of abstraction, and you might get the feeling that the world's complicated, and you just want to know the next right thing to do. When you feel like the next right thing to do is what you need to do, think bigger. Change your frame. Try to solve for more issues at the same time. It's going to force you to stretch. It's going to force you to think in new ways. It might even lead you to start thinking with AI. But the better you get, the better your business will get. So don't go for easy. Go for better.
Thanks. That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike. Take care.
Cheers.